Hello to everyone. That's good. Greetings from Ukraine. Nice to see all of you, all our friends, and all our participants. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, hope that everybody hearing me. And please, if it is possible, please note plus in the chat if you're here and see me, please. Because I see a lot of participations, but not all of them, I think, hear me. If it is possible. Thanks a lot. I see your messages, so let's start. My name is Ina Rudakova. I'm going to lead through today's meeting. We are so pleased to welcome all of you in our first online conference. We are grateful for your attention and interest in showing to our Volyn deposits in Ukraine. I remind you that the theme of our today's conference is Chamber Pegmatites of Volyn deposit. As you know, Volyn deposit is one of the most well-known and well-studied precious gem deposits in the world. You know that we mined more than 100 minerals, but the most famous, and I think most of you knew about that is our unique and huge crystals of quartz marine, smoky quartz, white color topaz, wine topaz, and of course, our famous beryls. And we have dreamed to bring people together who are interested in our Volyn deposit, and they want to research and know a lot about our deposit. So we are so glad to see today participants from different places, from Europe, from USA, from Canada, from Russians, greeting to you from Ukraine. And among us today, there are geologists, collectors, dealers, and new participants who are just getting acquainted with features of our Volyn deposit. This format has allowed us to bring together people from different countries, and they are ready to share their experience and research. So let's welcome each other because we are really ready to see all of you. Let's come back. We wish all participations of our conference fruitful work, creative and productive discussion. So we hope that it will be really interesting for you, and we will be able to create conditions for constructive dialogue and exchange of experience. And please, all questions which you will have to our speakers, you can ask after their speech, or you can write in a message. So after that, let me declare our conference open. So let's welcome again each other. Really nice to see all of you. So let's start. Well, now I would like to present our first speaker. I think that most of you knew him. He is a really famous geologist, our local hero. He studied and worked in our deposit more than 20 years. So he has a really big practice. Person who will make you wonder always, and geologists that never lose their luster. So welcome our friend and really one of the best specialists of pegmatites, especially in Volyn deposit, Volyn Chernousенko, with his son Alexander. They will start our conference.
We want to thank you, Ina, for the beginning of conference, and we'll start our introduction to the Volyn deposit. My father is a chief geologist of Volyn deposit, and he will start it.
Здравствуйте. В моем сегодня докладе будет мне активно помогать Александр, юный геолог, который на Волыни уже с 2012 года. И как бы начну свой доклад, наверное, кратко об истории нашего месторождения. Я думаю, предоставлю об этом рассказать Александра. И потом я более детально остановлюсь на некоторых проблемах.
So, I'm Alexander. I'm a young geologist. I'm working in the mine from 2012 year, and I will start the introduction of the history of Volyn deposit, and after that, my father will continue about most interesting questions. So let's start the show. So the Volyn deposit was was opened in 1911 year. The first important find was a crystal of topaz, which was about 300 grams. It was mined in the north part of the deposit, and it was found by the geologist Ivan Belsky Stepan Vladimirovich. He decided that there is a deposit here in this region, and he started looking for the money for the beginning of mining here. So he found that he started mining in 1931 year. The geologist who was the chief geologist there by that time was found the pocket in the first year, and this pocket produced more than 100 kilograms of topaz, and the biggest crystal of topaz was 3 kilograms. Here on this photo, we can see some of the crystals which were found in the first years of mining in Volyn deposit. The crystal of topaz, this crystal of topaz is more than 50 kilograms, and it's the crystal of quartz, which is more than 500 kilograms. So till the 1935 year of mining in Volyn deposit, all the mining was done to look for the topaz for the selling to the British banks. And just after 1935 year, in Soviet Union, they began to produce piezo quartz for the war industry. And from that time, the big open pits and the big production was started in Volyn deposit. So here we can see some mining on the placer. It's a photo of 1952 year. It was a big placer with a big amount of quartz, more than 20 tons of morion. Yeah, and till the first years, until the 1970 year, all the production was made in open pits, and they were looking for the kaolin pegmatites and for the places of morion. So in 1972 year, the first mine was built in our deposit. Here we can see the mine number 2. This mine have 2 levels. The first level is on the depth of 60 meters. The second level is on the depth of 100 meters. And there were built 3 mines, and each mine has 2 levels. All the length of the tunnels in our deposit is about 42 kilometers, and each mine opens more than 100 pegmatites. More than 150 pegmatites, my father said. So here we can see the map showing the tunnels of the mines. Here we can also, in this map, we can see the central part of the deposit, where the 6th and 2nd mine are located. Actually, the 2nd mine is, the 2nd and the 6th mine are the most interesting for the beryl mineralization because in this mine there were opened a lot of beryl pockets. Actually, in the mine number 2, the mine number 2 situated right here. There are 2 pockets in the mine number 2 with beryl, and one of them is the biggest one in all deposit. The number of the pocket is 5 to 1, 521st pegmatite. It produced more than 2 tons of beryl, and the other pocket in the second mine is number 445, and it produced more than 100 kilograms. And on the 6th mine, which is located right here, there are about 5 beryl pockets, but the production from them is not big, but some of the most beautiful crystals were mined there. So here we can see the structure as simply plan of corresponding Pluton and the pegmatite regions in it. Here we can see the Volyn deposit, Volyn's deposit, and it's interesting to show you that there can be found some more pegmatite regions in this area around the Pluton. The Pluton is made by the labradorite and other rocks, and the pegmatites are located in the contact between the labradorites and anaptysite with granite, palaeogene granites. So here we can see the 1.5 kilogram heliodor crystal, which was mined in a pegmatite 5 to 1, about which I have said before. It's the last one big crystal which was mined here in the deposit, and it's the biggest one for the past 10 years. Here we can see some production of topaz and different shapes of topaz, and it's interesting to see that in Adunchelon type of topaz, the color is blue one and bicolored one. This crystal is more than 300 kilograms, and it's the biggest crystal in all Volyn deposit. And here we can see one beautiful crystal which was mined on the second mine in the pocket number 394, and it has a wine color, and it's the usual color for the Ilmensky type of topaz. Some crystals of quartz which were mined in the second mine and in the third mine. So now I'll give my father to speak with you about the most interesting things in Volyn deposit.
Я буду говорить, Александр будет переводить. За время работы нашего месторождения был накоплен очень большой материал по расположению и минералам на Волынском месторождении.
As the mine was started, the deposit was opened and the mine was started in 1931 year. There are a lot of interesting scientific material was collected from about the deposit.
Я думаю, что это самое изученное месторождение пегматитов.
He says that we think that is the most learned deposit of pegmatites all over the world.
С 1931 года было открыто, отработано, разведано несколько тысяч пегматитовых тел.
From the first time of mining in 1931st year, there were opened thousands of pegmatites and thousands of pockets in them.
Двух похожих друг на друга пегматитов на Волыни найдено не было.
All the pegmatites are individual, and we haven't seen any similar pegmatites.
Можно сказать, что большую часть времени работы велись на поверхностных объектах.
For the most time of mining, the works were done on the surface of the igneous rocks, in the kaolin of igneous rocks, mining for pegmatites in the surface and placers of moraines.
И только в конце 60-х
And
да,
just in the end of 60s, some tunnels have done, and it opened us the opportunity to see not destroyed pockets and pegmatites, just like in the igneous rocks.
Большинство научных работ, связанных с месторождением, было проведено в период с 51 по 71 год.
Almost all the scientific material which we have collected was collected from 1951st year till nowadays.
Наиболее полное научное исследование было опубликовано в книжке совместных авторов под редакцией Лазаренко и Минералогии генетической.
The biggest, the most informative book about the Volyn deposit was written by publication
под редакцией академика.
After the redaction of academic Lazarenko by publication and other scientifics. And it's the most informative book about Volyn deposit.
Она была выпущена в 1973.
It was written in 1973 year.
После этого периода, как раз время работы в подземных, в шахтных выработках, данные не опубликовывались и зачастую не изучались. То есть данные, которые были получены в результате дальнейших работ в шахтных выработках с 1971 года, не опубликовывались и не были известны широко.
As the deposit was producing the material for the desert industry, for the war industry, all the scientific information was closed about it, and nobody can read it from other countries.
Эти работы, связанные с отработкой пегматитов в коренных породах, принесли новые данные.
But all this information, which was collected in pegmatites in igneous rocks, in not destroyed pegmatites in igneous rocks, was very important.
Появились новые интересные темы, которые требуют своих дальнейших исследований.
There were found a lot of interesting themes which needs some more explanation.
Таких тем очень много.
There are a lot of themes like this.
Ну, Вот некоторые из них, на мой взгляд, достаточно интересные для публики, я бы хотел сегодня осветить.
The most interesting of them I'd like to show today.
Одна из таких тем – это формы растворения кристаллов берилла.
One of the themes which is very interesting is the forms of etching of heliodor crystals from Volyn deposit.
Я хотел бы это продемонстрировать на примере очень интересного пегматитового тела номер
We'd
364.
like to show you the forms of etching from the pegmatite number 364.
Этот пегматит был отработан разведан при Советском Союзе в 1966 году.
This pegmatite was opened and mined in 1966 year.
При первоначальной отработке было добыто около 2 килограмм кристаллов берилла.
In the first year of mining in this pocket, there were mined about 2 kilograms of crystals of beryl.
В этот пегматит мы вернулись с целью ревизии по геологической информации, вернулись в 2007 году.
We decided to work in this pocket again in 2007 year, and here on the picture you can see how it looks like inside. There were a lot of water in it, and the rock was very unstable, so we used to do it more safely. Like here you can see.
Можно вернуться назад. Вот я бы хотел показать пегматитовое тело расположения. Данные о строении пегматитового тела были получены путем бурения, алмазным бурением с отбором керна, скважин с поверхности Земли. Это вот план. И видно расположение разведочных скважин и контур пегматитового тела.
The pocket was opened by the pegmatite number 364 was opened by the surface drilling, and the wells of this drilling gave the first information about this pegmatite. And here on the plan you can see the form of this pegmatite.
Ну, горные выработки, которыми был разведан пегматит, нарисованы вот желтым контуром.
The tunnels by which this pegmatite was opened are here on the plan. You can see them, they are yellow ones.
На разрезах видно строение пегматитового тела,
You can see
его занорыша.
the structure of the pegmatite, and you can also see the pocket, which is underlined now.
И видно уходящая вниз огромная зона выщелачивания.
And you can see the huge zone of leaching under this pocket.
К сожалению, формат конференции не позволяет задержаться на таких интересных вещах, как зона выщелачивания, зона занорыша.
Unfortunately, we can't do our presentation too long, so we can't discuss for a lot of time the leaching zone and the pocket zone.
Но объект интересен наличием в нем берилла. Когда мы вошли в занорыш, увидели следующее. Когда мы вошли в этот пегматит, то вот столкнулись с большими трудностями.
So, but this pocket is this pegmatite and pocket inside of it is interesting because it contains some beryls inside of it.
Да, переходим к следующему. Этот берил демонстрируется в качестве образца, он не из этого объекта.
This crystal of beryl is showing us just showing us the head of the beryls which are not etched. Actually, this crystal wasn't mined in this pocket. It's just the sample to do our speech more informative.
Мы здесь видим грани призмы,
We can see here the faces of prisma,
грани пинакоида
the faces of pinacoid,
и грани пирамиды.
and the faces of pyramid. So, and these crystals which were actually mined in this pocket, and here you can see how deep the etching was inside of them.
Уникальной особенностью для Волыни именно этого пегматита
And it's the unique characteristic of the beryl from this pocket.
необычные формы растворения кристаллов берила.
The forms of etching are really unusual for the Volyn deposit.
Мы видим здесь остаток вершины фрагмента кристалла с остатком.
Here we can see the etched crystal with the left face of the head of this crystal. Is the head of the crystal. You can see here the pinacoid and the pyramid.
И отсутствуют грани призмы.
And all the faces of prism were etched.
На соседней картинке
On another picture, on the right picture,
мы видим фрагмент, растворенный фрагмент кристалла берила, в котором отсутствовала изначально вершина.
on this picture, we can see on the right picture, we can see the crystal of beryl, which before etching, which doesn't have a head.
Особенностью этих кристаллов являлись наличие сильно развитой заигленности, развитой по пинакоиду. Именно по пинакоиду и по граням.
The also important characteristic of crystals of beryl from this pocket is the appearance of a big amount of small holes of etching in the pinacoid of the crystal and in the pyramid of the crystal.
Это предыдущий кристалл, где видно остатки грани пирамиды, пинакоида и дальнейшее развитие растворения.
It's the same crystal as from the last picture, and but from another side. And here we can see also the pyramids and pinacoids parts, but there aren't any prisma faces.
Надо сказать, что этот кристалл был найден внутри большой размером около метра псевдоморфозы.
It's interesting that this crystal was mined in a big pseudomorphose. The pseudomorphose was of monomerolith, kaolinite, and moscovite. Pseudomorphose after beryl crystal, and it was just a nodule which have left in a big pseudomorphose which was more than 1 meter in long.
На этой картинке мы видим фрагмент кристалла берила из этого же занорыша, в котором отсутствует, изначально не было вершины.
On this picture, we can also see that there is no that the crystal before etched and didn't have any head.
Мы видим отсутствие вот игл в этом кристалле.
Also, the important characteristic of pearls from this pocket was that the crystal didn't have any small gas water inclusions, which we call snow in our deposit.
Необычным является форма растворения этого кристалла.
It's unusual forms of etching of this crystal is even unusual for this pocket.
Среди большого количества добытого берила это является характерной особенностью для кристаллов, у которых не было изначальной вершины.
It shows us the usual form of etching of the crystal which didn't have a head before the etching.
Вот тоже на фото кристалл, в котором изначально не было вершины. Мы видим также выделение. Вот.
In this photo, we can also see the crystal which didn't have a head before the etching have started.
Кристаллы, которые имели вершину, растворялись с образованием вот таких форм правления.
The crystals which had a head before the etching have started and have such an unusual form of etching. Here you can see that the head of the crystal is here.
Да. Сейчас мы вернемся к картинке.
We'll continue our presentation. Just a second, please.
Эта особенность растворения таким образом кристаллов берила является характерной только для одного пегматитового тела.
It's a usual form of etching just for one pocket all over the Volyn deposit.
Можно ли вернуться к карте? Надо сказать, что это не является, находка такой формы растворения не является особенностью какого-то одного места в этом пегматите.
We need to say that such forms of etching are usual for all the pockets, not just for one part of it.
Да. Подобные формы находились по периметру всех вот этих уровней.
Such forms of etching and bills were seen all around the tunnels in this area.
Почему образовались именно такие формы? Предстоит узнать в будущем.
Nobody knows why such an interesting forms of etching have formed in this pocket, and we hope that people which are here and people who love minerals and geology will also think about it and help to find the answer for this question.
Мое выступление подходит к концу. Я постарался зацепить, затронуть одну только такую тему.
Our presentation is going to the end because we decided just to speak about this interesting theme.
Много вопросов связано с тем, почему наши занорыши в наших пегматитах имеют такой большой размер.
There are a lot of questions about, and we also want to discuss some questions about our deposit in general, such as why the pockets in our deposit are so big, and why the pegmatites have just one, maximum two pockets.
По моему мнению, это связано косвенным образом с наличием углерода.
We think that it's because of the carbon in pegmatites.
При обследовании пегматитов, сотен пегматитов,
While mining in the hundreds of pegmatites,
скрытых шахтными выработками,
which were opened by the tunnels of the mines,
практически везде были обнаружены либо остатки, либо выделения кюрита.
almost in all pockets there were some finds of chloride, of the mineral chloride, about which the Peter will speak in his presentation.
Yes. Кроме этого, в 1961 году
And it also in 1961 year,
одна из скважин
one of the drilling wells,
пробуренная на глубину 615 метров,
which was drilled to the depth of 615 meters,
скрыла занорыш в пегматите, заполненный газом.
opens the pocket in a pegmatite filled with gas.
Объем газа был настолько большой,
There was so much gas in it
что буровой инструмент был выброшен из скважины.
And all the drilling was dropped it from the well.
И в течение 20 минут происходило выброс газа из скважины.
And about 20 minutes there was gas going from the drilling.
Свидетели, люди чувствовали запах яиц.
The people who were doing the drilling smelled some old eggs.
Это свидетельствует о наличии сероводорода.
It shows us that there were some сероводород in this pocket.
Я думаю, что гранитная магма, поднимаясь кверху, что в пегматитах газ расширялся по мере поднятия гранитной магмы к поверхности.
We think that the gas was gone to the pocket while the magma was going from the lower part of the earth.
Таким образом, размер занорышей в пегматиты связаны с заполнением их углеводородными газами.
So we think that the sizes of the pockets are such big because of some carbon gas inside of them.
Это только некоторые из множества интересных тем.
It's just the beginning of the presentation about the Volyn deposit, and we hope that the other speakers will open a lot of interesting information about it. Thank you.
Again, hello to everyone. Oh, it is really great because I see new people. So nice to hear you. Nice to see you again and come back to our schedule. So next, our speaker. I think also all of you knew him. He is our friend during a lot of years, and he knew a lot about our deposit. So his name is Peter Lindberg. Let's welcome him. Peter Lindberg, National Museum of National History. So Peter really knew a lot about our deposit because during 36 years he studied Pegmatites and he visited different countries. He was in USA, he was in Brazil, in Namibia, and in different places. And during all this time, he studied Pegmatites. Frankly speaking, I think he one of the most of the best people who really studied and researched our deposit during a lot of years, and he visited us. So welcome, Peter, and I think for all of us will be really very interesting to hear your talk, your report. Again, I would like to tell that the theme of his report will be the chamber pegmatites of Volyn deposit. So welcome, Peter, and please.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Ina. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will speak, but of course it's the images. My presentation is always showing a lot of images. Anyway, Vsevolod and Alexander already introduced us to some of the history of the western endocontact of Rapaki, the granites of the Coruscant Pluton, 1.7 billion years old. So those are some of the oldest gem-carrying pegmatites in the world, together with those in Finland, which are also in Rapaki granites. The difference is that in Volyn, you see on the western side, most pegmatites were mined, but there also occur in the south, probably in the north. Of course, the granite is weathered, so you have a cover of 10 to 40 meters of clay, residual clay. And most of the mining in the early days was from former pegmatites that had weather, where the center of the pockets with quartz and topaz beryl were left still in situ in the clay, and all the feldspars and micas of the granites weathered away. So I only participated in the mining since 1995. I had some old historical pictures. We will probably skip them. And Professor Simmons joined me on my first trip to Voldas in 1995 after having traveled 1 month in Siberia and Urals, so 1 month of pegmatites in Eastern Europe and Siberia. So, of course, it's a very, very special deposit. When I came the first time, I wonder how in the world did they find everything, and then later I was told that it was by core drilling. So core drilling, of course, the main activities was probably later 60s, 70s, 80s. So piezo quartz was needed for industrial purposes and military purposes. And something like 75% of all the piezo quartz in Soviet time was mined from here. There were 1,500 pegmatites mined in Kazakhstan as well, and plenty of hydrothermal quartz veins in the Urals, in South Urals, in Polar Urals. So an enormous intensity of mining for piezo quartz. And at the time, you would get imprisoned if you would steal a piece of piezo quartz, because this was supposed to be, or at the time, strategic material, while topaz and beryl was not important at all for the mining. And it was given away to visiting geologists. Now, not too many geologists were allowed. In principle, you were only allowed to visit down in the mine if you had some real business there, if you were involved as to help in the mining efforts. So when I tried to visit already, I was invited to come and visit in 1985 by this Polish geologist, but that would mean that I would go with him across the border from Poland. I could go to Poland from Sweden easily and go into Ukraine. He said, oh, you just say "Yeah, Balt, I'm from the Baltic states," and not knowing any Russian or Ukrainian, maybe I could get by that, but I did not look forward to a future in a Siberian labor camp, for unknown time. So I waited 10 years and I managed to get in contact with a demologist in Kiev, and later he gave me the address to to the director of the Kvarts Samosvetny. And it was a very, very interesting visit. Of course, this was shortly after Soviet Union fell apart, so it was completely different from what is now in Ukraine. All the former Soviet state has developed immensely in different ways, but this mining effort also with so many tunnels at 2 main levels and 3rd level, it was, and even just the core drilling, if you would count on small cores, it was an effort of 500 million, half a billion, or even with this big size that we're using, this is in modern terms a matter of 1 billion or 2 billion euro for finding all those pegmatites. Anyway, it was necessary, it was needed material. And it wasn't only when I told you in 1985 that I saw the first Helidor, and later, especially in the 90s, mostly mineral dealers from Poland were bringing Helidor and some topaz to mineral shows in the West. And there was one Austrian young fellow, René Triebel. He was traveling, he bought from one young Russian mineral dealer, and then later he found out that there was in Moscow, you could buy in Titsky Rynok, there was a market where you could buy those beautiful Heliodor crystals. He went there many times by train and bought. And I did not visit Soviet Union or Russia more. I only managed to get to St. Petersburg one time in '86, but I was not, unfortunately, in Kiev. Anyway, I will now, if we can get any images, I will show you, and I will tell you some of the experiences 1995. And I've been following the mining. I've seen a lot. I've seen hundreds of pockets in several of the shafts. And I've kept very frequent contacts with the mining company to be able to really follow. I did the same in other pegmatites as well previous to this, and I had very long-term interest in different deposits. I mostly studied in Scandinavia first, and I was in the Urals. I was in California pegmatites from 1987, of course, mostly about tourmaline and kunzite and so on. But when you see many different types of pegmatites, it adds to the interest. And we haven't said yet, but the Volyn chamber pegmatites are really, really special in that they have crystallized within the granites, probably within the mother granite. We will hear later about the geology of the whole Korostin Pluton and the granitoids. And I started before saying that the chamber pegmatites themselves, they're located along the edges of the granite intrusion. Now, that means that probably was eroded a bit, because for surely there was some towards the apex, the upper part also, and that's what you see in Finland in the Viborg Massive. Most of the pegmatites that we found so far are more in the center of the granite, so weathering is not as deep as in Volyn, is my interpretation. Now, it's not necessarily so that you would have an equal spread of pegmatites along the roof zone and all along the edges. Of course, we know many where you haven't found, but whether it's only due to erosion or not, we cannot be completely sure. But anyway, I'm looking at some of my images here. I had plenty of historical images. I had many images from pockets, and the largest topaz in the oldest was, well, there were several over 100 kilo found. One is in Moscow State University. This geological collection has a lot of ore sample, doesn't have much of mineral specimen, but there's one giant topaz crystal exhibited there. And then in 2013, this giant topaz, which you saw Alexander behind, 76 centimeter diameter and 325 kilo in weight, is the largest bicolor topaz that I know of. And there was one piece broken off at the bottom of that crystal, weighing 50 kilo. And I know the chief geologist Vsevolod Chernosenko, he was laughing at me because I had a lunch. Lunch was very simple. It was in principle only a bottle of water. But I sat and had lunch on this 50-kilo blow topaz, because that's not many chances in life you have that. Anyway, the mine has shown me, and the visits to the mine has shown me many interesting features. The structure of the chambers, the structure of the pegmatites themselves, the zonation. Now, Vsevolod touched upon it, and Alexander, that we saw the cross section of the extreme leaching. So all of these pegmatites, in principle, there is just a couple that are untouched by heavy leaching. There was a secondary, after the crystal formation, there was a leaching of the bottom. So the quartz was leached out and recrystallized in the ceiling. And of course, later, many have collapsed, the quartz crystals, giant quartz crystals, up to 10 ton. Now, normally there's some to a few 100 kilo, and some pockets had a couple of crystals, so 3 ton, 5 ton, and so on. And when it comes to piezo quartz, it's the piezo quality is only termination, which means that many of those huge, beautiful crystals in the oldest, they were broken off just to take the non-twin parts at the termination. Now, for us who are interested in the geology, we like to see the complete crystals, and the morphology of the quartz in Volyn is also very interesting. There are even Japanese law twins, and they're left-handed, right-handed, Brazilian law twins, Tessiner habitus, and so on. Now, Vsevolod touched upon the hydrocarbons, and I described, in fact, I found already in 1970s a hydrocarbon pegmatite in Sweden, which I compare. There, the hydrocarbons are solid. Still, they're in the graphic structure around the pockets. There are small chunks in the pockets. I wrote a paper in the ZVMO, the Russian Mineralogical Society. I did that study and research in 97. I think it was published in 2001. So I've been speaking about, hydrocarbon pegmatites for 30 years. And in fact, one time when I went to Ukraine, my intention was to find chlorite. And I spoke with Vsevolod, we have to find chlorite in other places. And Vsevolod, he had observed small, minute black. And when I went there, we did find chlorite that very first time I intended to do so. And then later in many pockets, of course, Vsevolod, he have seen much more than I. I can visit for a few days every month if I'm lucky. Right now, it's been hard. I have not been for a year. I flew out in March 2020, the last time, for a weekend visit. And the border closed down for 3 months, a few hours after I left. So sometimes I managed to visit many days, but the cooperation has been fantastic and allowed me to document, and I strongly urge Vsevolod to photograph and document pockets, and he has done a terrific job. And it's not only about documenting, because it is to observe, to be very observant. And that is needed, of course, to find the material that the mining company wants to find. But also for the scientific studies, you need to be extremely observant and to find beryl or topaz. You may spend 1 month in a pocket where there is beryl topaz without finding it if you're not really observant and looking at the right places. Very good. So I hope everybody else can do that as well. Then I will go here. Here is the Karsten. Then I will, because we already spent quite some time here. So the old mining, I go very fast now. And the piezo quartz, the first barrels that came out summer 85. I saw a much bigger one the summer 85. This is Skip Simmons' photograph on our first visit. And this is the first topaz pocket I saw underground in 95, bicolor topaz. The giant Tellidor, and here's the clay overburden, digging in the clay, trying to find. I will go very fast now. And here it's very harsh conditions. I must say it was a state run for most of the time. Then it became partly privately run, and I think it's completely privately run now. And of course, conditions in the old days were probably good from 95. The mining effort was really down, so there was not much pumping of oxygen, and only the last decade has been again pumping oxygen, so there's enough air. Only in winter you could work reasonably. In the summers, very hard. And you can see a photo. Oops, now something happened. Now I see Skip's screen here. So anyway, you can see my face is very red. There was strip search. Every little crystal was put in a safety box, taken out of the mine and strip search everybody. Was completely okay, of course. The problem is it was not possible to bring any feldspar or quartz out of the mine. So I photographed interesting feldspars and micas and so on. Here's topaz in the mine. And here are old photographs of topaz crystals. And the pockets are enormous. Normally we speak about pockets that are 1 or a few meter. And here are pockets, and the largest pocket we haven't mentioned, but it's in Pegmatite 521. And there are 2 sections. They haven't broken the wall, maybe 2 meter wall. This is a small corner of the giant pocket 521, which is in fact about 85 meter. That's enormous pocket, 15-20 meter to the ceiling. Level difference, we estimate at least 25 meter, but it hasn't been dug out because you can imagine such a giant chamber at almost 100 meter depth that there's some stability. So you need to backfill and move. And anyway, here is in one pocket that Sevelo spoke about before, where this deep etching was on the barrels. Here is a big barrel in situ. And here it is, the leach zone reached 36 meter. And the gem barrels were just under the floor, and the oldest they haven't mined them. Okay, I jumped this one. Here's the big topaz in Moscow State University, big heliodors, and the museum in Volodsk. And here are examples of the best. So now you see the chamber. You can see that there's a quartz core above the chamber. And main key here is that they're giant. Here's giant pocket working in Pegmatite 521. Here is a chamber that hasn't been opened. You can see the structure. Here's the leach zone under the albatization under the pocket. Here's the detail of the contact of the leach zone. Giant crystals fallen down. And here's a 1.4 meter crystal that took about a week for 14 men to bring out of the mine. Here is a beautiful area of Khoroshev. And this granite intrusion is, in fact, you have to go a little uphill so you notice the geological structure when you come there. Here's a heated and non-heated heliodor. And some pockets, they're very different shaped pockets. We haven't fully described this yet, but here's a big topaz pocket. Here's another pocket. There was one topaz pocket like this, like a shaft down, another one, not only quartz. Here's a big smoky quartz left in the pocket, and you can see the oxygen was like working at 5,000 meter. A few tiny barrels are gathered on the floor in that pocket. And here's the first time that we could document barrel in situ, okay? The albite floor was leached away, but we could, by looking at the geology, find the barrel in situ. So those are the first images from barrel in situ in this mine. Here was a broken crystal, and here is a 15 meter high topaz pocket. I worked there during many visits to try to find some special small things just to analyze. Just some tiny samples. I took some cross sections of the pegmatite. Now, here, now we come to tests, and you need to see here. How do you dig this pocket? Of course, you need to be very, very careful digging a pocket, not to destroy it. So here you would dig with your hands, everything loose. If you can see my pointer up to how to dig almost, there's a hard part of the pegmatite, and then we come into the pocket zone. So you would, if you would start working here, you see the big, almost vertical smoky quartz. If you start working 7-8 centimeter from that, you would have hit this topaz crystal. That's a 29 kilo topaz that later unfortunately broke in a section because it was put in a bucket with water to clean it. But you cannot do that because there's so many gas and fluid inclusions that if you do that with specimens, they really risk of shattering. So here is before it was put in a bucket, and a smoky from the same. And here are a couple of pictures. I show this one, and here is a topaz pocket. We found some fantastic things here. It was the first time we found what I've been dreaming of, to find the minerals really in situ. Here is an old topaz crystal fracture. Here is a big wall with topaz crystals that makes it hard to take them out without destroying. And here is a piece of a boulder that's now in the mining company with one topaz very nicely. And here is Sevelo. And here I'm carrying out a part of this topaz, and it's now preserved at the mining company. And the specimen that came out from this pocket were here. One of the geologists, he called it Peter's dream pocket because I had been dreaming to find such a pocket in situ. Here is another pocket where everything is, the former topaz is now chloratized. So you can see here with molybdenite. tiny, tiny bits of topaz just inside. And we saw a few larger pieces. Now, around the pockets, what is interesting from mineralogical viewpoint, that there are fracture zone around, and you can have a variety of minerals. You can have siderite, you can have goethite, okay, it's a group of minerals, you can have fluorite and so on around the pocket. And here was one pocket that was in fact, they mined up to a pegmatite right next to us, and this pocket had only calcite and fluorite. So there was not feldspars, quartzes, and so on. Okay, here is just showing some of the mining conditions. Here is having lunch in the town. I had many times lunch in the mine. And of course, open pit mining. There was an effort a few years ago with nice smoky quartz here with a big barrel, and the team are happy. Of course, the non-transparent barrel doesn't pay for mining. One thing I haven't said, mining is extremely expensive. So the sad thing is both with governments to allow and all kinds of people, they think that gemstone mining is where you make a lot of money quickly. No, it is not at all. If you want to make a lot of money every day, every week, every month, every year for a long time, you just mine granite, you crush it for road or concrete. That's where you make money, or mine a metal. Mining gemstone takes huge input of money. And when you find something, you find a pocket, wow, 100 kilo topaz. It costs you so much that you're very lucky if you recover your money. So it's only brave people who do mining. Here's the best chief of security of any mine. He's a very, very serious guy, and you can see how he's checking out this smoky quartz. I love this photo I made him. In fact, I was filming him and I took snapshot while I was filming. So here is unique bicolor topaz from the open pit, and this is what one looks like with fluorite inclusions. Now, I don't go into detail, but it's very interesting mineralogy if we look into the inclusions as well. Here is one of those etched barrels and topaz. And here is by Albert Russ, master photographer. And I'll show you a few of the cut stones from the mine also. Here is a cut stone with fluorite inclusions. And here's more from the giant pocket, just for you to have a little idea how big it is. And the two miners to the left here, they're still working at the mine. And there are 2 of 5 men who found 900 kilo of gem heliodor during 5 days in Pegmatite 521 in 1992. So there are some of the heroes who rescued some of these heliodors. And here is the crystal to the right you saw already, and the left as well. And here is another crystal. Those are the 3 best big crystals ever found in heliodor. To the right is a beautiful heliodor. And here is a shaft with topaz. Here is a cross section my son helped me draw, just so you can see the shape of that topaz pocket. So there were a couple topaz pocket which has completely different morphology. And here is topaz in situ. Now the largest topaz of this pocket was, I named it Sergeyev, the owner of the mine, 230 kilo. And it's not cleaned up, but you see the clean crystal to the right, 35 kilo here with Albert Russ. And here's a cut 9,000 carat stone. But also how much it cost a fortune to find such a stone. Now we will look at some of the most beautiful. I must say that for Europe, the Volyn deposit is by far the #1. I would say most interesting and most productive. There are at least 2 different species of completely gem quality and giant. So it's a unique deposit. In Finland, we found some fantastic heliodor, and in some quarries we found some topaz in different quarries, but this is one deposit nearby with all these natural colors of barrels and the topaz, barrel up to the left, down to the right. And look at the colors. Here, the color zonation of topaz, natural blue topaz, and here is a bicolored. In fact, it's unique in the world to have such strong color. And of course, it's because they're so old. And the orangey cognac colors induced by radiation. And here is from the giant pocket. And here is a find that one of our in the audience, Professor Axel Müller at the University of Oslo, Museum of Natural History, he was with me a couple of years ago, and 10 minutes after we went to the mine, this incredible crystal was found. I will just show you a couple of the other minerals. We come to Kurite that was found. This is Michael Label photograph. And there's some in Vernadsky Museum. They're in Kiev also. Here's by Dr. John Jazak, Kurite with fluorite, a sample that I collected. And his micro, I will come back to that later. And here's by Dr. Simon Filippo here in Museum of Natural History in Luxembourg. That is some small samples. Now, here is by Brian Swoboda, all natural colors from this deposit. If you're not impressed by this, but imagine also it takes millions of euros of investment to find such things. And it takes a super geologist and good miners. So many years ago, there was one gentleman working for the director of the mine, and he asked me, Peter, is Vsevolod really worth his salary? And I said, I have no idea what he has in salary, but if you pay him the double, I know that he's worth that too. And that is something that tells everything about how good, because I met hundreds of geologists, and Vsevolod, and of course now Sash also is the real expert of this deposit. Vsevolod is almost lifelong, and it's not only, he studied many other deposits before this, and he traveled the world, and we often discuss many other deposits, very important. I want to thank Volyn Kvartsamosmetsny, especially Sergei, Alena, Vsevolod, Inna, Alexandra, and all the miners, and also previous geologist miners on this deposit, because it's a lot of hardship to mine. It's very difficult. And of course, I'm employed not by the Museum of Natural History. I'm a scientific collaborator. So I have a completely other job, and I do this all on my spare time for my pocket money, and family money, which disappears. So I have to thank my children and of course my wife. And my wife is half Ukrainian. Most people don't know that. And then I want to congratulate my daughter who just graduated. And one last thing, which is not least important, it's very important to encourage the young. This is my son at age 1 year old. He started collecting quartz myself. And in fact, that's how my interest in geology started. I was 1 year old and a few months. And I started right here where the star is right next to me. In the granite gravel my grandfather brought and put on this gravel road, there was tiny muscovite to a centimeter quartz and feldspar. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I had to do it a little quick. I hope that you could all see the images finally and that it was enough of interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. It was interesting to see and to listen to.
Any questions? We have a couple of minutes, I think.
Peter, hi, that's excellent. Just a general question, how abundant the fluoride is in the pockets in general?
Yes, in general, Vsevolod would be even better too, but there are some pockets that had fluoride. I would say there was one which was just huge calcite and a lot of fluoride. There was a second pocket with a lot of fluoride, and pockets where there's some fluoride as very late stage, but not really that. And of course, in topaz pocket, I would think much of the fluorine is in the topaz. So, but Vsevolod knows better. Maybe Vsevolod and Sasha have some comments to that.
Dear Peter, really thanks. Very interesting for us especially. And I would like to ask you what plans you have. Do you have plans to visit Ukraine?
Of course, I will come in not too long. That's for sure.
Great.
Opening up again. It's been a year, so it's
great. Nice to see you. You know that we are really happy to see you in Ukraine, in Kyiv. So welcome.
Thank you. No more questions. We are a bit early, so maybe I took it too fast.
You have amazing presentation, really very beautiful and very interesting. You have so fantastic crystals, and it is really amazing, really amazing. Thanks a lot for your hard work, and these photos very interesting, and I think for people who understand about what we're talking about, it is really great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Professor Skip Simmons, are you ready already to give you?
I think I am.
All right, I will give then an introduction to you. So Professor William B. Simmons, he is a professor and professor emeritus of the University of New Orleans. where I got to know him I have to count, it's almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago. And he has been studying pegmatites most of his life, or all of his life. He is now at he's research director at the Maine Mineral and Gem Museum, which is a rather recent museum up in Maine on the border with New Hampshire. And where they have, I haven't unfortunately not visited yet, but they have a fantastic exhibit and they have good research facilities. And Professor Simmons have described many new minerals. He has studied pegmatites all over the world. And he's in fact the only person that I traveled to 6 continents with. I met up on 6 continents. We traveled together on 5 continents to study pegmatites. And it's a great honor to have had the opportunity to share so many wonderful visits with Professor Simmons. So we're really looking forward for him to present mineralitic pegmatites, which are many types. What we've done now presented were just within the mother granite. We could call them like big bubbles, and Professor Simmons will show us the great spectrum of pegmatites and what can be found in them. So most welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, can you see my presentation, Peter?
I cannot see it yet. I see you. So have you shared your screen yet?
Yes. I have.
So then it is.
See what's happening here. Let me get out. There's my. Okay, so you don't see my shared screen?
No, I see you. So Ina, you will need to choose. I see you in full screen, Skip. So I don't see your shared screen.
Okay.
Start. Okay, now we see it. Now, very
We
good.
see. Everything is okay? Everyone
Yes.
see and hear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, all good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
Okay. That look right now? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about mineralitic pegmatites in general, not just these fantastic ones that are there in the Ukraine, and we'll see some examples from the Moat Mountain type mineralitic pegmatites in New Hampshire, and some of the mineralitic pegmatites from the Orongo Mountains, and make some comparisons to these enormous chamber pegmatites in the Volодарsk area. So we'll start out with this diagram to kind of get our feet on the ground about mineralitic pegmatites. This is the depth zone classification of Cherney and Ursit, 2005, and modified in 2012. And this is the classic classification of pegmatites according to temperature and pressure. And you see the mineralitic pegmatites are down here at the low pressure end of this and at the lower temperature ranges. So this is classically the mineralitic pegmatites. What I want to emphasize today is that in addition to this, there are many rare element pegmatites that have mineralitic cavities in them. And so they need to be included in this kind of definition. If we look at the classification by Cherney in 91 and in 2005 and 2012, we see that here we have the mineralitic pegmatites, and the original Cherney classification, it was just the NYF pegmatites, and then it was recognized that they needed to add also the lithium bearing mineralitic pegmatites. So these then are pegmatites that form at low pressures between 1 to 3 kilobars or depths of 3 to 9 kilometers. This has been modified by Axel and Mike Wise and I, and part of our paper, our proposal for a new classification of pegmatites, which I'm going to give you a brief preview of, and just going to put them in terms of our new scheme that's coming out soon. This is in press and Can Min right now. And so this classification is based on residual melts from granitic plutons and melts formed by direct products of anataxis from anataxis. So those are the two main categories. They're grouped into three groups. Group one from residual melt from granitic plutons is related to S-type granites. Group two to A-type granites. Group three to I-type granites. And the myelolytic pegmatites, the ones that I'll be talking about, a few of them today are here in this A-type granite relationship. These are interior pegmatites, are segregations that are forming right in the granite. So there's no question about the relationship of the pegmatites to the host, to the granite. And I'm going to be talking a little bit, giving you a couple of examples from the Moat Mountain type pegmatites in New Hampshire, and some from the Orongo in Namibia that we've looked at. But in addition to that, I want to include some myelolytic pegmatites that are kind of very different from the ones that we've been looking at and talking about. And I'll mention these LCT type myelolytic pegmatites that are found in. So these pegmatites that I want to include in this talk are the beryllium lithium boron pegmatites that are the result of anataxis. So these are segregations of anatectic melts that are from metamorphic rocks from the pegmatites, and they represent a melting of the felsic portions of the pegmatites, and we'll talk about some of those as well. So again, this is the new proposal of the classification of pegmatites by Mike Wise, Axel, and myself, and it's in press. Hopefully, you'll be seeing it soon. All right. So now, oops, there we go. So we'll start out with the New Hampshire myelolytic segregation pegmatites. These are related to the White Mountain batholith and some other related intrusions, but a large number of them related to the White Mountain batholith in New Hampshire. And this is along a failed arm of a triple junction that's related to the breakup of Pangea. And so we have these Jurassic and Cretaceous plutons that were intruded in this area. And there are many segregation pegmatites associated with these that are quite well known in the New England area in the US. Here's the White Mountain batholith. It's a composite batholith, and it intrudes volcanics. The reds here are volcanics. So this is a composite batholith that's composed principally of the Osceola and the Conway granites. And within these granites, all these spots here are segregation pegmatites that have formed in these, and we get these myelolytic pegmatites. Also, in the Ossipee complex, which is to the south of the White Mountain batholith. Here we have some of the segregation pegmatites, myelolytic pegmatites that range from these small ones of a few centimeters and to meter-sized ones like these two here. And what you can see in this image here is the granitic texture out here, and then the beginning of pegmatitic texture right around some of the minerals that are found here. Topaz, of course. These are small crystals in comparison to ones that you've been seeing, and not so dramatic as the ones from the Volyn deposits, but we have topaz and smoky quartz crystals in these Myrtleic pegmatites. Smoky quartz, and some of these can get up to a meter in length. And one of the things I want to emphasize is that there is fluorite slide as we move to Africa, Southern Africa, and the Orongo mountain pegmatites that are here in South Africa. And these also are related to rifting, the breakup of Gondwana, excuse me. And we have the intrusion of these magma centers, including the Spitzkopos, and they are Cretaceous in age. And so this complex, the Orongo, is a caldera complex, and here we have the volcanics in the center that have been intruded by the Orongo granite in yellow, and the sites of abundant minerals are these spots here on the south, around the southern edge and the northeast. These are where we have abundant minerals and the production of a lot of gem material. And here are some examples of these Myrtleic pegmatites, some that are up to about a meter, and they're smaller ones, but have many like this size, a few that are big enough for a couple of people to get into. Here's Peter in one of the larger Myrtleic pegmatites. He was in there. This is a place where Jeremy Avite had been found, and he was in there looking for that. Here you see some of the minerals that are found. We have lots of beautiful aquamarines, although very small in comparison to the chambered pegmatites and minerals. We have topaz as well. What is unusual about the Orongo mountain Myrtleic pegmatites is that there's a lot of tourmaline in the form of schorl, lots of beautiful schorl. And that is atypical because in most Myrtleic pegmatites, we don't have the boron to produce the schorls. Excuse me. We have proposed that this boron is a result of contamination of these melts when they were passing through the Marne metasediments. And we got the contamination of a lot of boron, which ended up in these final stages in the Myrtleic pegmatites. Again, we have fluorite, not abundant, but it's there, and I think it's an important aspect of these pegmatites, showing us that fluorine was an important flux in the formation of these pegmatites. So now I want to kind of shift gears and do something that's very different, and let's talk about these beryllium, boron, lithium pegmatites that are in Maine and that are Myrtleic. So they fall into this category, but they're not the typical what we normally think of when we're talking about Myrtleic pegmatites. But I think it's important to put these into that category. Here we're looking at some images of these type of lithium-rich pegmatites in Oxford County, Maine. These images are from Mount Mica. This is the famous Laurel Merrill pocket from 1904. You see Lauren Merrill in there holding a tourmaline crystal. These other images are from the recent mining era that started in about 2004. These are some small pockets in the beginning. They got bigger when our pocket fairy, Frank Parham, is always there to look into these pegmatites. And here he is. Here are some images inside the pockets, the Myrtleic pockets in these pegmatites. Here you see the beautiful tourmaline crystals, lepidolite, spodumene, and some of these only contain quartz. These are the tourmalines that are produced from this pegmatite, very famous for 200 years of production from Mount Mica. And we have a new player here in the Havey pegmatite, and it has abundant marls also, and it's been in production now for about 10 or 12 years, and is producing a lot of marls. As you can see here are 4 marls along the wall of the pegmatite, some big enough to get into to mine. And what they're mining in here are tourmalines like this that are in this altered albite. Here's another pocket that still has tourmaline showing in the bottom. This is a close-up of this showing the beautiful bicolored tourmaline. So these then are the marlitic LCT type pegmatites. So I don't have all these wonderful photographs of the Ukraine. I've borrowed some of these from Peter, and just to show the scale, the enormous scale of these marls and these chambered pegmatites, and in the Volyn area here, you see several in one pocket and another one giant pocket. You've seen this map before. There are hundreds of pegmatites. This shows just the central area and the distribution of them there. And here is a picture that Sevalod took of the giant chambered number 521 pegmatite. It's measured 15 meters tall, 30 meters long, 25 meters wide, and 2.5 tons of beryl. You've heard about that and seen some of these fantastic crystals that have come from there. This is from Peter Lichtberg's 2009 paper, Figure 38. So when I was there, I was there twice. I was in 1995 with Peter, and then again in 2013. And I was underground. And here is a picture with Sevalod, his son Alexander, who you've seen earlier, and Peter. And here's Alexander in the pocket that we worked while I was underground, and looking at picking in the pocket floor for crystals. And so I was really happy to be back above ground. So you can see me with a big smile on my face, not only because I got to see these wonderful marlitic pegmatites, these huge chambers, but because I actually came back up. It was, here I am, overweight, out of shape, and up from sea level, and in this very low oxygen environment in the mine. I was struggling while I was there, unfortunately. And here you've seen much better pictures than I have. These are some of the pictures that Peter holding these fantastic barrels and topaz, bicolored topaz, smoky quartz, giant smoky quartz crystals, regrowth on some of the broken crystals where they were laying and growing. Here's some of the barrel in place, and of course the spectacular heliodores there. And again, fluorite. We'll talk a little bit about what's important in pocket formation. So what we've got to have is volatile X solution. And the way that happens is by fractional crystallization, decompression, and also by depletion of water-soluble enhancing fluxing components, such as boron, lithium, fluorine, and phosphorus. So let's look at decompression. If we look at the rongos, this is likely the kind of scenario that we had there. So we had a caldera complex, and what happens is you get a doming, ring fractures, and then you get a venting of the material. And if these vents get down to the magma chamber, you get explosive eruption. And this then is like a Nuée Ardent. So when this pressure reduction happens, we start to degas the magma. We get bubbles in the upper portion here, and they come out with these eruptions, but also some are left in the upper portion where the magma is viscous enough that the bubbles are retained. So that's the idea of the orongos, and just then to kind of show you some examples of this. This is the cliff wall up in the granite on the east side of the complex, and these two areas shown by these arrows are where there's abundant minerals. This is a close-up of this area here. So my students that are up here visiting one of the miners who have a temporary home in one of these minerals, he had a bedroll in there and a stove, and he would stay there days on end working these minerals. You can see the debris down here. But look at this. Look at the abundance of all of these marlitic cavities. Not all of them are gem producers, but this is kind of the idea. To me, this is like the head of a beer that's frozen. So there are areas like this, and this is the result then of decompression. In the marlitic cavities, we are mainly dealing with fractional crystallization. So in a little cartoon here, we have the pegmatite dike. We have crystallization from the walls inward, and the main minerals that are forming in the Oxford County pegmatites are quartz, muscovite, and albite. There's hardly any K spar in the outer portions of the pegmatites, only up next to some of the pockets. So what happens is that these minerals are removing silicon, aluminum, potassium, and sodium, and the incompatibles and water are being fractionated towards the center portion of the dike. And when the percentage of water exceeds about 12%, we develop another phase, exhausts out, and this forms the pockets and into which these crystals grow. This is another way of looking at it. If we start out with a melt with 2% water and allow it to crystallize, we see after about 80% crystallization, we get 12% water, and that is when we start to dissolve these bubbles. So it's in this region right in here where these pegmatites are forming, and this gives us the pegmatitic textures and the concentrations of these incompatible elements, including the boron and lithium, fluorine, rubidium, cesium, etc., in these minerals. So for these to form, then they are aided from, in addition to fractional crystallization, we have the effect of depletion of the fluxing components. So if we have these elements present in the melt, boron, lithium, fluorine, that increases the solubility of water in the melt. And then if during the late stages, we start to crystallize minerals that remove these elements, such as tourmaline, lepidolite, spodumene, and bligonite, that then promotes the release of additional water. So it's a combination of fractional crystallization and depletion of fluxing components that gives us these water that we need to make these minerals, because the melts in the beginning don't have much more than about 2% water in them, according to our calculations. So we'll finish up with this with a kind of a model for the formation of these pegmatites, these marlitic pegmatites. First of all, you've got to have a melt that contains sufficient fluxing components for late stage exsolution to occur. And in the marlitic pegmatites, the classic marlitic pegmatites, fluorine is important, and we find it associated with most of these marlitic pegmatites. The pressure regime must not be too high. It must be generally less than 3 kilobars, as exsolution is inversely proportional to pressure. Pockets are most abundant in shallow level pegmatites and virtually absent in pegmatites formed under high pressure conditions. Fractional crystallization and late stage formation of minerals that remove fluxing components result in the exsolution of late stage flux-rich, supercritical, high-density aqueous fluids that form minerals, especially in the LCT type marlitic pegmatites. And it's in these minerals that the gem crystals and minerals-rich and incompatible elements grow. So we allow these minerals to grow from an interaction between the silicate melt and the dissolved fluid and the protopocket. And there's a lot of exchange of ions through that medium, and that allows us to grow rather pristine crystals, gem quality crystals, and these minerals that are enriched in incompatible elements. So we'll end up with that. And I thank you for your attention, and maybe I can answer questions. Thank you very much. I apologize again for my poor internet connection.
Thanks a lot for your report. It was really very informative and very, very interesting. If you have any questions to our speaker, you can ask him or write him in a chat. What will be available for you? So if you have any questions, you can ask our speaker. So any questions for now? If you would like to, you can write in a chat or in a direct to him. And let's come back to our schedule. If everyone is ready, we would like to invite a very interesting person. He also, I think, knew a lot about our Volyn deposits. So his name is Mr. Leonid Shimlansky. Welcome him, and nice to see him. So he is studied in Research Fellow School of Earth and Planetary Science, Curtin University. So we invite him for his talk, and if he is ready, if Leonid, you are ready, let's start.
Okay, I will try to share my screen now.
I'm sorry, Leonid, can you regulate your camera, please? Because we do not see your face. Oh, thanks a lot. Now we see you better.
But you don't need my see, you need my my presentation.
We also would
My
like
face,
to see you. Nice to see you.
Okay,
So let's start.
Okay, so you must see my, yeah, you can see it now. Okay, so my talk is based on a new paper that was just accepted in the European Journal of Mineralogy, and it is dedicated to the geochronology of granites of the Coristin Pluton. And in this paper, we are trying to explain origin of pegmatites, of chamber pegmatites, of the Volyn pegmatite field. So here is a map, schematic map of the Ukrainian shield. You can see Coristin Pluton is located in the northwestern part of the Ukrainian shield. And there is another big Pluton of the same type, also in the central part of the Ukrainian shield. It is called Coristin Mirgorod, and a few small intrusions in the eastern part of the Ukrainian shield. All of these intrusions were formed between 1.8 and 1.75 billion years ago. All share similar composition and similar similar features, but chamber pegmatites are known only in relations to Coristin Pluton. And there are no pegmatites, no chamber pegmatites in the Coristin Mirgorod Pluton and northern in eastern part of the Ukrainian shield. And one of the explanations for this is the level of erosion of these intrusions. So it is believed that Coristin Plutonic complex has very low level of erosion. So we can see, actually in the field, we can see in parts preserved roof of this intrusion. Whereas in the central part of the Ukrainian shield and in the eastern part, we can see only deep levels of the intrusion. So we believe that in Coristin Mirgorod Pluton, the level of erosion exceeds probably 5 kilometers. And in the eastern part of the shield, we can see only roots of this huge complex. So here is a map of the corresponding plutonic complex. You can see there are a lot of granites Alpakivi shown with this pink color, and there are also huge anorthosite Gaberic intrusions. And you can see here ages that we produced that we obtained for these igneous rocks. There are a lot of ages. Now it's up to 30 different ages in different parts of the intrusions. And we are trying to apply these geochronological methods to explain origin of pegmatites. So now we will focus on this part of the corresponding pluton. This anorthosite massive, huge anorthosite massive called Volyn massive, and all known chamber pegmatites are located. Actually, I will show on the next maps. Are located just near these huge anorthosite intrusions. There are also small mineralitic pegmatites in different parts, everywhere actually in the corresponding pluton, but usually size of those minerals does not exceed like 10 centimeters, 5 centimeters, so they're quite small. And only in the vicinity of the anorthosite massive, we can see huge pegmatites, which contains quite big crystals of different minerals. So we want to explain this, why we don't have chamber pegmatites in different parts, in other parts of the corresponding pluton, and all of them are concentrated in near the anorthosite intrusion. Okay, here is one of the sections of typical pegmatite intrusions. So you can see here the main zones that occur in pegmatites. So outer zone is composed by graphic pegmatites, and also in the bottom part of the pegmatite body, there are different kinds of graphic pegmatites. Then in the upper part of pegmatite body, we usually have so-called pegmatoid, so which means coarse-grained granitic material, and then feldspar zone, quartz zone, and in the central part of the pegmatite body usually occurs, not usually, but often occurs so-called chamber or big mineralitic cavity filled now with various minerals. So it's not really empty space. It's a chamber filled with minerals and with clay minerals between large crystals. So what is the important feature of such pegmatites? They usually, well, not usually, they never have real feeders. So we never see anything like dikes or channels that feed these pegmatite bodies during their formation. Usually they have quite sharp contacts with host granites. And what is important in the bottom part, just below pegmatites and sometimes around pegmatites, there's so-called granite rich in mafic minerals. So these granites are much richer in biotite and amphibole than other minerals, as in other granites in the area. And also important feature of these granites is the composition of plagioclase. So plagioclase in this in this area is much richer in calcium than plagioclases in host granite around it. Okay, so now I want also to show you few examples of pegmatites. So in this area, pegmatites occur not only in granites, but there are also pegmatites of other composition, but real pegmatites that occur also in anorthosite. And we applied some of our knowledge obtained from anorthosites to explain origin of pegmatites in granites. So for instance, when we look on here, you can see a sample of anorthosite. You can see quite big plagioclase crystals here, and you can see this material between the plagioclase crystals. This is actually a granitic material. It is a graphic pegmatite. This is a residual liquid that left after crystallization of mafic minerals, of plagioclase and mafic minerals. So you can see that there are quite a lot of this pegmatite or residual material in this sample. Here you can see the polished surface, and you can see that this part of residual liquid is really represents a graphic pegmatite of felsic composition or granitic composition. Sometimes in outcrops we can see pegmatite bodies in anorthosites. So here is a wall of one of the quarries. It is just cut, vertical cut, and you can see few pegmatite bodies, for instance, here and here, another one and third one over there. And what is interesting, when you look on this, for instance, on this pegmatite body, you can see a real layering. So mafic minerals are accumulated in the bottom part of, or in the lower part of this small, even such small body. So we have a lot of pyroxenes in the lower part of the body, and felsic materials accumulated in the upper part of this body or another body. And here's just example of such pegmatite. It is in a mined block, so it's not its real position in the space, but you can see this small pegmatite body, and you can see that it has quite sharp contacts against anorthosite here. And there are no feeders, no visible feeders. And I mean, this pegmatite was probably formed just by accumulation of residual liquids that was expelled from surrounding anorthosite. And so just accumulation of felsic material. Here's few photographs. So in some cases there's some kind of small chamber pegmatites, so small myelolytic pegmatites in anorthosites or in jotunnites. You can see here one of the examples. So quartz crystals. I will show you here some like this, close to amethyst, and there are a lot of calcite crystals, and sometimes you can see also quite big feldspar crystals in such cavities in anorthosites. So let's look now on a map of the Volynsky anorthosite massive. You can see here it is shown in the central part of this picture, and pegmatite fields are shown here. You can see this is the main Volyn pegmatite field, which contains this famous Volyn deposit. pegmatite deposit, but there are also smaller occurrences of pegmatites in different places around these anorthosite intrusions. And you can see that most of them are located very close to contacts with anorthosites. And here is a map of Volyn pegmatite field, and you can see his anorthosite body, and all pegmatites are located just like a belt surrounding this anorthosite body, and actually granites just near contacts with Gabber anorthosite bodies are also unusual. They quite often contain small amount of olivine, phyllite, and also they contain some pyroxene, which are not common in hypokivi granites located at a distance from anorthosite massive. So from the petrological point of view or petrographical point of view, there is a real indication of the influence of this anorthosite massive on a host granite. So we can see some migration of for instance, iron and magnesium from anorthosite body into granites that results in formation of mafic minerals that are not common in granitic intrusions. What I want to say now is that it is commonly thought that these granitic intrusions are younger than anorthosite. So most of people believe that granites were intruded into all the anorthosite massive. But if we accept this idea, it's very difficult to explain origin of this mafic enrichment in contact zones with anorthosites. And also there's some kind of cyanides, so-called hybrid rocks that occur at contact between Gabber and granites hypokivi here. So I will talk about a little bit later. So now about origin of chamber pegmatites. So there are some preconditions for formation of chamber pegmatites. To form chamber pegmatites, the host granite must remain in a semi-crystallized plastic state, thus allowing the fluid to overcome the lithostatic pressure and inflate the chamber. At a later stage, the semi-crystallized granite forms an interlocking crystal network and thereby losing its ability to form chambers. And as a result of this, the time interval during which pegmatite chambers can be formed is relatively short. So when granitic pegmatites cannot form when granite is still fully melted, and it cannot form when granite is almost fully crystallized. So it can form only at some short interval during crystallization of granite. And to extend this interval of possible granite crystallization, we need some external factors that can help to form these chamber pegmatites. And so it must be some additional factor that was acting specifically in the Volyn pegmatite fields, which extended the common mineral forming process, allowing the formation of a large chamber pegmatites. As was said in a previous talk, exsolution of gases and gaseous fluids is a very common process that accompanies evolution of any magmatic system. It results in various specific textures, including neolithic cavities that can be seen in felsic intrusions. However, the formation of huge pegmatite chambers requires special conditions, which can occur when the process of granitic melt crystallization is extended, and when a continuous flow of gases or gaseous fluids is maintained. So here I want to show you a few examples of contacts between anorthosite, or in this case gabbroic rocks, and host granites. So you can see on this picture, you can see this convolute contact between two rocks that indicates that during the emplacement of anorthosite, host granite was still in a semi-plastic stage, allowing formation of this kind of contacts. And also on this figure, you can see intrusion of semi-liquid or maybe fully liquid, even fully liquid granitic material into gabbroic material, into gabber here, and probably such contacts were used initially to indicate that granites are younger than gabbers, because you can see here intrusion of granitic material into gabber. But as we can see from geochronological data, actually these granites are a little bit older than gabber. So I will not stop too long on these figures. What is important here? So when we look on all geochronological data available for the Coristin plutonic complex, you can see here. So, for instance, these pink dots, they indicate ages of hypocave intrusions, of granitic intrusions. So you can see that most of the dated granitic samples are older than, for instance, anorthosite. So anorthosite certainly was younger than granitic intrusions, and it was intruded into semi-crystallized granitic intrusion. And when you look on the age of pegmatite, so age of pegmatite is very close to the age of anorthosite intrusions. So in our model, intrusion of anorthosite body was very important for formation of chamber pegmatites in Volyn pegmatite field. So this emplacement of anorthosite mafic or basic magma, which was hot and which contained a lot of gases, it intruded into semi-crystallized at that time granitic massive, which intruded just 1 or 2 million years younger before intrusions of anorthosite body. So this emplacement of hot anorthosite magma, which was much hotter than granitic magma, temperature of granitic magma is estimated as about 700 degrees, and temperature of anorthosite magma was probably above 1000 degrees. So emplacement of anorthosite magma resulted in secondary reheating of granitic intrusions, and also in partial remelting of these granitic intrusions, and also as it was full of gases and full of fluids during the emplacement of anorthosite emplacement, these fluids were migrating into the semi-crystallized granitic massive, resulting in formation and in inflation of chamber pegmatites and in formation of huge pegmatite bodies in this area. So this is in our, according to our model, this explains why we don't have such huge chamber pegmatites at the distance from anorthosite massive. So they always occur just next to anorthosites. Okay, this is just continuation of this model. And just as a conclusion, the emplacement of basic melts and the subsequent interaction with the partly solidified grains played a crucial role in the formation of the chamber pegmatites. The degazing of basic magmas at shallow levels resulted in infiltration of additional fluids and gases into the overlying partly crystallized granite massif, ultimately resulting in the formation of the chamber pegmatites. Yeah, that's end of my talk, and thank you for your attention. And in this photo, you can see me holding a meteorite that I found in a field just last month. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leonid, for your talk. It was really very interesting for us, I think so. So if anyone wants to ask Leonid some questions about his speech and his material, you can, all of you, you can do it now, or you can write him if you would like to have a chat with him or to speak with him. Any questions for now? Yes. So let's come back to our conference. Again, it's nice to see all of you. So now we will have a very interesting talk by Peter Lindberg. Again, welcome Peter Lindberg, about Kerite from Volyn chamber pegmatites. As I understood, it is a talk and a speech by Professor Gerald Franz. But technically he can't be the part of our conference, and thanks a lot for your helping hand, Peter. So Peter Lindberg will tell us about the Kerite and about this about his talk. So let's start. So listening
very much. You can hear me now. I just want to thank Professor Simmons and Dr. Sumlyansky for very interesting talks. That's very valuable. And we hope that we'll come back next year and we can include some more lectures. And of course, we should have started with the basic geology of the karst in Pluton, but because of the time difference to Australia, we had to move it on to now. So I'm sharing my screen now, and I hope that you will see it, everybody, this time. Can you see it now? I will wait till it's.
Yes, Peter, we see your screen.
Good.
So we come back to the pockets and the very peculiar occurrence of Kerite. And as you can see, there were quite a few of us involved, and Professor Gerhard Franz of University of Berlin, who visited to make some electron microscope images of the Kerite with the help of several of his colleagues. And we're also working with colleagues in Kiev and in Geoforschungszentrum in Potsdam. So the Volyn deposits are very, very interesting. Of course, the basic is the understanding of the emplacement, and we got a very, very important part of that here. And what we haven't said is that you also have under those pegmatites, you do have those mafic minerals in. You have, in fact, sequences of a banding, which is also interesting, but that is for next conference. So we will have a little bit of look at the kerrites. So the study was the kerrite fossils, which we found in several different pockets. Some several collected together, some several collected. And they are extremely well preserved organic matter. And we wonder what is the mechanism of preservation and why they haven't degraded. When you collect them, they do easily degrade after, so you have to be a bit careful with them. And we have a little bit of morphological study in chemical and structural characterization. And then I will say in this, when we speak about in a broader perspective, life on Earth also, there are several different hypotheses, and maybe I will even put in a fourth one, because we all know about black smokers, that's a good environment, we have specific bacteria growing there and so on. There are other ones, which is a combination of, you know, I should say clouds. It can be ash clouds, it can be regular clouds, it can be, of course, surface water. And a third one is meteorites that would have brought some kind of organic matter life from not planet Earth. And the fourth one is, in fact, within crystalline rock. And how would I come with this crazy idea? Well, why not? We know we have the hydrocarbons. We don't know what could be the first one, but we can look at Chernobyl reactor. Everybody knows about Kiev, Ukraine, and Volodymyr. Not so many, but or now Korošiv, but unfortunately Chernobyl everybody knows about. And we do have some dark bacteria growing that are in fact fed by radiation. They're taking up the energy from radiation. So that is also a possibility, but this will be much, much further studied to come up to that. So kerrite, it looks like, I should say, like a very rough cotton. If you think you have cotton, but a bit thicker fibers, and they're black, we will look at some of their shapes. Here is from a museum sample from Kiev. And we already saw the cross-section of cavities. In fact, the pegmatites and the chambers can vary quite a lot depending on the contents. That's for the next. Now, age dating of the kerrite fossils, they are more likely like 1.5 giganos. That means shortly after, within 100 million years after the formation crystallization of the pegmatites. Absolute minimum age is 560 million years old. That's the budding tonight age, which Professor Franz studied. And here was a test of uranium-lead determination, minimum age due to continuous resetting with uranium-bearing waters in open cavities. So this is a study of the isotopic lead 207, 204 over 206, 204. So that age gave 514 plus minus 150. It's a very huge span here, but that's what that gave. Now, pyrolysis, that's by heating to check what components are in the kerrite, was giving this. You can see the methane, and here we have benzol, toluol, and so on, trimetylbenzol. I'm not an organic chemist, but here is amorphic carbon, and we can also confirm, and Dr. Simon Flipp already saw this also, the silica, nitrogen, and sulfur. So we can study fibrous and flaky, spherical, fibrous, and you see the branch one to the right here. And sometimes they're outgrowths, they're also overgrowth and segmentation. Now we will, and you see the scale here, 15, 20 micrometers. We also have some secondary mineralizations, for instance, of fluorite in the kerrite. Here is also on the surface chlorite, kaolinite, and some unknown species, but silica, aluminium, sodium, and iron. And also at the bottom, you see with the sulfur on the outer. And we can see here a group of fibers with some albite, You see the structure, the silica on to up to right, and fluorite down to the left, the cubic crystals. And to the right here, you can see that they have a central cavity, sometimes even a double cavity. So, of course, these are very, very old fossils, and we have to study them further and compare with, out of our fields. Here are some zooms from, you can see the cross section of one of those fibers with tiny cavities. Now we're speaking about nanometers here. See the lower below a micrometer, so very, very tiny. And here are the cross sections, one, and up to the right you see with a double. And down to the left you see this cover also, seems like, and also you can see that is in fact a double fiber with a coating. So here we have also the double fiber to the left, and to the right bottom you can see the cavity, the shape of the cavity. We have some late stage mineralizations inside those cavities also. For instance, there was some microscopic zircons. Here is with reflected light, 3 zones with high, low, intermediate reflectivity, and low, high fluorescence, low, high, and low fluorescence. So there are some irregular flaky objects. And here is electron microprobe mapping across those. So we have an oxygen, silica, aluminum enriched outer rim, and also some calcium with minor phosphorus in the outer rim. And in the central part, we have sulfur and nitrogen. And here is a rim of a larger fiber. So the calcium is not coupled with the aluminum silicon, only in some parts with phosphorus, as calcium phosphate, apatite, and then you can see in the outer rim, nitrogen is absent in the outer oxygen rim, and the sulfur is more enriched in the rims. So summary, the micro-taphonomonical process to preserve these fossils as part of an endolytic microecosystem. So the chamber and the pegmatites provide an exceptionally large pore space suitable for deep biosphere. So that is very interesting. And I must pinpoint also that we have only found those kerrite in the cavities, not in other sections of the granite intrusion. They do not occur in any fissures further from the pegmatite, not in the granite. And water was present. Of course, there is water in the cavities even when forming, and later stage when cooling down. So of course, the last stage, quartz crystallization, we have determined, or other, I shouldn't say we, because we didn't study it directly, but other scientists have determined down to 160 degrees. Of course, this depends on many other things. And partly or completely water-filled cave, we don't know, after the formation, and possibly with temporary dry and wet periods. And silica transport was likely enhanced by the fluorine, other anions, chlorine, and sulfur. And then the silication of the outer parts implies immediate access to silicon and aluminium. And heating without deformation after the formation of this silicon aluminium enriched outer rim enhanced decay of the organic matter, but did not destroy the morphology. So we can see still very good the morphology. And we didn't show all, we have a lot of images with details. The aluminium silicates predominantly clay minerals crystallized on the surface of the kerrite fibers and producing this small irregular outer rim with no permineralization. So that was a short introduction to this kerrite. Everybody who knows the Volyn deposits know about this peculiar find some many decades ago about kerrite, and it was one of the curiosities that I started to speak with several Chernosenko chief geologists right away. So of course, this is a very, very particular part of pegmatology, very, very unusual part, but it's also something that needs to be studied. So thank you very much for your attention. And here is the geological ages, which we already saw even more detailed.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for your talk. Really very interesting and informative. So now we invited again our chief geologist, Всеволод Chernousenko. He will come back to his speech with his son, Alexander. So they will show some photos, maybe someone new or someone do not know that we have a really very famous and unique museum in Zhytomyr region in town Horoshev of gemstones. So Всеволод now will speak a little bit about our museum and show some his photos from museum and his own photos of our minerals.
Nice to see you, Goran.
Nice to see you too, Peter. Yeah.
Peter,
Всеволод,
When
for
did-
you.
I see
Okay.
Leonie right now. Thank you very much for a
Yeah.
wonderful talk. And I hope to
Yeah,
meet you not too long.
yes, me too. So I have a question to you, actually.
Yes.
So what do you think about origin of this organic matter? If it was organic or inorganic?
I think it was inorganic from the beginning.
Okay, so it was just expelled from melt and then used by organisms to produce this garnet.
Yes, I think so. And
Okay.
my crazy idea is, of course, to be completely wild. It's a hypothesis, but we have those bacteria at the Chernobyl reactor, which are in fact living from radioactivity. So they capture radioactivity and they live from this. So why would not that be a possibility at early life when we had the first solidification of rock? Why not?
So,
Yes,
hi,
such,
everyone.
okay.
Sorry for interrupting. So, hi everyone, and we want to thank you, the previous speakers, for really interesting and informative speeches. And thank you again for them. And now we are going to speak about the crystals, the most interesting crystals of precious stones from the Museum of Volodar-Volynsk, the Mineral Museum from Volodar-Volynsk. So the museum situated in Volodar-Volynsk in the city Horoshev. It was called Volodar-Volynsk for a few years ago. And the museum was built as a learning collection for the geologists from the Volodar-Volynsk deposit. And for a long time, it was closed for the public. And after the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine has bought it in 1991 year, it opened for the public. The museum was founded in 1951 year. And here you can see some of the most interesting specimens. Yeah, now it's correct. Here we can see the crystals of Geliador mined in the northeast pocket of the pegmatite number 521. The crystal right here is the biggest one, which is presented in the museums all over the world. The biggest one, clean crystal, it's about 5.8 kilograms, and it was mined in 1992 year. On the right picture, you can see some crystals which were mined also in 1992 year, and they are also presented in the museum. So now we will try to describe this pocket more properly and show you the pictures of the pocket where it was mined and the pegmatite where it was mined. The pegmatite number 521, where the crystals of beryls were found, have two pockets. One pocket is the southwest pocket. It was not very rich for beryl crystals. And the second one is northeast pocket, and is the richest pocket for the beryl in Volyn deposit. It produced more than 2.5 tons of beryl, and west-south and southwest pocket produced just several tenths of kilograms of beryl.
Находки берила были сделаны в юго-западном только после
The first finds of the beryl in
присоединения к Советскому Союзу.
southwest pocket were found just several years ago, and when the pocket was opened in Soviet Union, nobody found it that time. And my father, chief geologist Vsevolod, is the first one who opened the beryl in this pocket, in the southwest pocket. So it's the footage of the pocket in this pegmatite. We can see that the sizes of each pocket is really huge one. Each pocket is more than 1,000 meters in cube. So we think that it may be each of this pocket may be the biggest one in not only in Volyn deposit, it can be the biggest one in the world. Here in the northwest pocket is the central part of the pocket and is going down for more than 8 meters. Unfortunately, the bottom of the pocket is under the dams because we're going up to mine some crystals of Hilarion.
Еще даже не выяснили окончательные его размеры.
And we don't know, and we even don't know exactly the sizes of this pocket because there are a lot of different apophyses, like this one, and the big one was open. The big one was open in that direction also, and we haven't mined all the pocket material from it yet. And here we can see the southwest pocket. It is the upper part of the pocket. It have in this pocket there was mined about 65 tons, 65,000 kilograms of quartz crystals, of Moran crystal, and in this pocket there were mined about 89 tons of Moran crystals. So we'll start the description of the pockets from the northeast pocket. Here we can see that the pocket is composed by the collapsed material of pocket, of the ceiling of the pocket. We can see here the Moran pieces and crystals and feldspar crystals and pieces. They have fall down from the ceiling of the pocket, of the open camera, and it was fallen into the zone of Lichtenstein, and some of the material from the pocket fall down into the Lichtenstein zone more than for several meters, so it's difficult to underline the contact between the Lichtenstein zone and pocket. Here we can see just one part of the pocket, just one wall of the pocket, and in this direction there are some Lichtenstein zone, and it's going down for more than 8 meters from this part. Here is the Lichtenstein zone, and we decided to call all the Lichtenstein zone, we decided to call it also a pocket because some crystals of beryls were found here too. And we can see that the quartz crystal and quartz material which have fallen into it was totally etched, and sometimes we can also see some pieces of microcline which are totally replaced by elbite and clevelandite. So here we can see the Lichtenstein zone. It's lowest part. We can see that the structure of this Lichtenstein zone is Lichtenstein zone is like a pieces of rock within the is the pegmatoid from which the quartz was totally etched, and sometimes in the between these pieces of Lichtenstein zone we have found some beryl. Here we can see the lowest part of the Lichtenstein zone. which is the contact between leaching zone and the pegmatite zone. You can see that it's not straight, and it's going like more and more quartz is going to be in the pegmatite under the leaching zone. So in this pocket, as we said before, in the pocket northeast pocket, there was mined more than 80 tons of topaz, of quartz of Moron, and some of the crystals were more than 1 meter in length and wide. So, and for the quartz from this pocket, the form good, well-shaped crystals are very rare, and almost all the quartz was in this shape. Here we can see some of the crystals, of some clean crystals of Heliodor, which were mined in the northeast pocket in 1982 year. The biggest crystal which we can see here was around 5 kilograms. And mostly all of the viral crystal was mined in the leaching zone. And we saw 3 types of line of the crystals in the pockets, 3 different types of situation of the crystal of Heliodor in the pocket. So the first situation which we found, it was like an apophysis in the west part of the northeast pocket, in which the crystals of Heliodor were relative to the Clevelandite surface, which grow up on the pegmatoid. This apophysis was mined in the upper zone, was found in the upper zone of the pocket, and it produced some tens of kilograms of beryl. You can see it's just the first days of mining in this apophysis. It's just the beginning of mining in it. In a few months, it will be like a hole about 10 meters wide and 10 meters in length and 3 meters in height. Here we can see some of the Heliodor crystals from this apophysis. Yeah, it is lying on a Clevelandite between some microcline and albite and kaolinite. So the biggest amount of beryl was mined in a leaching zone, as I said before, and here we can see some old photos from that zone, showing us how the crystals were situated in the pocket. So here we can see the concentration of Heliodor crystals in albite sand with microcline crystals and broken microcline crystals. It's interesting that in this zone, mostly the crystals of beryls were found together, like small concentration parts of the pocket, like 1 meter to 1 meter, and it produced more than 20, 30 kilograms. Once it produced 60 kilograms, but the length, the distance between these Heliodor concentration zones, about 2 meters, 3 meters. So it wasn't like a zone in which we found the Heliodors in every few centimeters, but without any very big concentration. Here we can see the Heliodor in the lowest part of the pocket. It is situated in albite sand. The pegmatoid rock and the pocket rock, which fall down into the leaching zone, was so etched that it's totally turned into the sand, in albite sand. Here we can see one interesting specimen, and it's interesting that this crystal was found in a albite Clevelandite rock, which has appeared as an etched and replaced pegmatite rock. And it's interesting that that nobody can say exactly if the crystal growed in these holes after the pegmatite rock was etched, or it was already in a pegmatite rock before etching. Some specimens were showing us that it's almost like it grew up in the hole, and some specimens were like it was in a pegmatite. So it's difficult to understand. Here we can see the southwest pocket of the pegmatite 5-1. And it's also interesting to say about all the pegmatite 5-1. We can't see it on a plan, but the pegmatite was so big, it was more than 60 meters high, that it was found in the surface of the kaolin igneous rocks. So it even was destroyed by erosion in this level. And here we can see the bottom of the pocket with the clevelandite surface on pegmatite. Is the usual situation in the southwest pocket of the pegmatite number 5-1. The pegmatite have like 30 degrees fall for almost all its length, but in the west part it have a sharp falling about 70 degrees to the depth of 12 meters. Here we can see that the pocket is appeared as a material which will fall down from the ceiling of the pocket before it was, and we can see here it's the west part of the pocket where the clevelandite surface, like I'm standing on a clevelandite surface, is falling down really sharp. So in this pocket we found some, as I said before, we found more than 60 tons of quartz of moran. As in the previous pocket, the crystals were not of good shape and almost all of the crystals were broken. But it's also interesting to underline that we didn't saw any tectonical cracks in the host rocks or something like this. So we think that the collapsing of the pocket isn't because of the tectonic. So here we can see the crystal, which is more than 1 ton in weight. So here is the western part of the pocket, which have a sharp falling down. And in this part of the pocket, we have mined almost all of the crystals of heliodrome. And we can see the clevelandite surfaces which are falling down. And in the bottom of this hole, the clevelandite was replaced, and it was like replaced to the sand of albite, and the feldspar crystals were also replaced by albite. Here we can see some of the crystals in this part of the pocket, and we can see that the crystal, how the crystal was found there, is it doesn't grow on a clevelandite surface, but we can see we didn't know where it was grown. We believe that it grew up in a clevelandite surface, but after collapsing, it fell down into this feldspar, clevelandite, mica material, and we know that it's not on the first place of growth because the crystal was really etched, and the material which have left after etching is really small amount of material which have left after etching. And it shows us that the crystal was replaced from the place of the birth. So here also the crystal of beryl is the southwest pocket. And just to compare it with another pocket from the second mine, is the pocket number 445, and we can see the holes which have left after the beryl crystals, and we analyze this information, and we know exactly that the crystals from the pocket 521 southwest pocket was grossed also on Clevelandite. And my father is saying that in these holes there were found just very thin crystals of beryls, and which were in the material of beryl etched, like veteranite, darlinite. So here we can see the biggest crystal which was mined in the southwest pocket. It's 1.5 kilogram crystal, and as usual for the all Pegmatite 521 for the southwest pocket and northeast pocket, is for the beryls from southwest and northeast pocket, it's crack in a big crystal. It's similar for both of the pockets. And it's also interesting to underline that in the southwest pocket there were mined a lot of big crystals which were more than 10 grams, and the amount of clean crystals was bigger than the amount of muddy crystals. And we don't know why it's so, because in the northeast pocket there were a small amount of clean crystals, and there were a lot of very small, more than one, less than 1 gram crystals of heliodor in this pocket. We think that it can be because of the more powerful etching, but comparing the two beryls from two different pockets, we can see that the forms of etching are a bit similar, and it's an interesting question which has to be found. Also in the southwest pocket, there were found a lot of topaz pseudomorphoses. You can see them lying on a Clevelandite surface. Yeah. And the topaz pseudomorphoses is like kaolinite, montmorillonite, muscovite pseudomorphoses after topaz. We also found some fluorite crystals on them. So some of the biggest pseudomorphoses were more than a ton or a ton and a half, and we think if the crystals of topaz weren't totally etched, it will be the biggest topaz pocket in the deposit. In some pseudomorphoses, in all pseudomorphoses like this one, there are a lot of small nodules of topaz which have left after etching, so these rocks weigh a lot. So, and we also can see that it's lying on a Clevelandite, so it's relative to the Clevelandite surface, and the quartz crystal, which is totally broken after the blasting the pocket, is lying on the topaz. So here we can see a very interesting picture showing us the Clevelandite surface in which we see the crystal of heliodor. And above the crystal of heliodor, we can see the pseudomorphose of topaz. And it's really interesting and rare specimen, because in a lot of books about Volyn deposit, it's written that topaz and beryl can't grow together. But here we can see that they can grow together. We also found some septomorphosis of topaz in other pockets or in Volyn deposit. Here we can see some accessory minerals in this pocket. For example, here we can see the yttrium fluoride crystals of clevelandite with microclay. Also, we found a lot of siderite in this pocket, and it's like a secondary mineral, and we think it can grow after the topaz etched and fluor was left up from the topaz. So here we can see that the natural crack inside the crystal is a usual defect for all big crystals from the pegmatite 5:1, and also comparing two pockets in this pegmatite, we can say that beryls from both of them have gas water inclusions and the similar forms of etching. So the pockets are very similar to each other, but the amount of beryl was very small. So now we are going to speak about the heliodors from the museum from the pegmatite number 206. This crystal have its own name, academic Pavlishin, and the weight of this crystal is more than 2 kilograms. So the weight of this crystal is 1 kilo 700 grams. So both of these crystals were mined in the same pocket, but we can see that the structure of etching is also different and the color is different. All in all, it's very interesting to describe the pegmatite number 206 because it's almost the only one pegmatite in Volyn deposit which had a lot of small pockets of small pockets. There were about five big pockets, more than 10 meters in cube, and a huge amount of very small ones. And it's also interesting to underline that the pegmatite was found under the grass. The topaz crystals and quartz crystals were found under the grass, and it's very rare for the middle part of the Volyn deposit, where the average depth of sedimentary rocks is more than 10 meters. So we can see that it was like a small mountain of the igneous rocks in this part. It's this pegmatite was totally turned into the clay, and it was more than 60 meters in length and about 30 meters in height and 20 meters in height. So here we can see the workings, the mining process on this pocket, and this pocket didn't have a big quartz core. It have a lot of it's the pegmatite. It have a lot of pegmatite, graphic, and blocked feldspar zone, and the pockets were found under the blocked feldspar zone. Here we can see some crystals of moran from this pegmatite. The biggest crystal which was mined in this pegmatite was found in 1951 year. That crystal was more than 700 kilograms. Actually, this pegmatite was found in the 1951 year. So, and it produced more than 10 tons of moran crystals. This pegmatite is very interesting because it's the second largest pegmatite in Volyn deposit for the beryl crystal, for the amount of beryl crystal. Here we can see the photo of the freshly mined crystals of heliodor from the pegmatite number 206. The photo was done in 1955 year. So it's this crystal is the same one as in the museum showcase, which is 1 kilo 700 grams. It's also interesting to underline that some of the small pockets which were smaller than 50 centimeters in cube had just a poor mineralization, and sometimes the mineralization of these pockets was just a crystal of heliodor, and as you can see on the picture, and the feldspar, which is totally turned into the clay. And maybe it was growth in the feldspar, and here we can't see the crystal of Morion, which I said before, and we can see the pegmatoid structure around this small pocket, and we can also see the blocked zone of feldspar, which is totally turned into the clay.
Он был очень слабо отравлен.
The crystal was the crystal didn't have any powerful forms of etching, so we think that it grows in the feldspar, and the feldspar crystal saved it from the etching. Here we can see it's also interesting to say that from different pockets in this pegmatite, there were different forms of etching of the beryls. We can see that some of the beryls were almost without any etching forms, without any powerful etching forms. It's a small crystal, about 3 centimeters long, and it's also interesting to see the good formed head of the crystal. In some cases, in this pocket, all the crystals of heliodor were really etched and turned into the sand, and it's like a beryl sand, and it's interesting that the pockets with this crystal and this sand of beryl was not far from each other, about several meters, and the level was the same one. So it's interesting to underline how different the etching can be in each pocket, even in one pegmatite. So in this pegmatite, there was found a lot of topaz also. There were found more than 600 kilograms of topaz in Soviet Union here. And the crystals of topaz were of two different forms. The picolored and blue crystals were of Adunchilonsky type, and the wine color, orange color crystals were of Volynski type. And we can here we show some picolored crystals of topaz which were freshly mined from a from a pocket which was more than several meters in cube, and it shows a very deep picolored color, which is very rare all around the world. And the Volyn deposit is almost the one deposit which produced the crystals of this quality and sizes of picolored crystals of topaz. We can see that the crystal doesn't have a good shape, and it has some interesting structure of etching in it. Yeah. So the biggest crystal which we found in this pocket was more than 100 kilograms. It was even more than 200 kilograms, I'm sorry. But unfortunately, the crystal was of bad quality, and it was broken by a lot of small cleavage pieces. And we can and this part of the crystal was found it's a part of that 200 kilogram crystal. that piece was from this part of the crystal. And also we have to say about the dumps which have left after the pocket was mined in Soviet Union. The technical environment of that time was very difficult to mine it because there were a lot of water with the sand, and kaolin was going up from the open pit because of decompression, and a lot of crystals of heliodor and topaz were just going to the dumps. And actually this pocket, this pegmatite number 206, was mining for the quartz, for the piezo quartz. So the geologists and miners of that time didn't really care about the other minerals, and it was allowed it not to take any crystals of beryl or topaz if they are smaller than, for the beryl, 80 grams, for the topaz 200 grams. But sometimes also, as this pocket have a lot of small pockets, really small pockets, they even didn't saw them and took them with the excavator to the dumps. And when the Soviet Union was falling down, the local people decided to start mining crystals from this dump because they were very rich ones.
Я бы хотел еще добавить, что, по всей видимости, такие прекрасные кристаллы ушли в отвал, потому что они выросли в таком же, как мы показывали, занорыш, именно в полевом шпаке. И рядом не было кварца, поэтому они вместе с породой были выброшены.
My father is also saying that maybe these crystals, because they have almost the same form as the crystal which we showed you in the institute, we think that it can be integrals into the feldspar, into the kaolin which have left after the feldspar, and there were not quartz more in this small pocket, and nobody just saw it, and it was just excavated to the dumps.
Об этом, в частности, можно судить по поверхности.
We can see that the surfaces of head and the surfaces of prisms of the crystals are saved from the etching. So
такие поверхности наблюдались в других пегматитах, когда кристалл берилла экранировался полевым шпатом, и часть граней не расставлялась, а сохранялась одна или две, и они также имели похожую поверхность.
And we saw some specimens in not kaolin pockets of some specimen of beryl, which were lining, for example, the pocket number 445, where the crystals of heliodor were lying under the feldspar crystals, and these crystals not so etched, and they had the same shape as this one's crystal.
2-3 могли уцелеть.
And sometimes 1 or 3 faces of the crystal did not have any type of etching on them. So the dumps the local people started to work in the dumps in 1991 year, and this crystal is more than 2 kilograms, was found in 2000 and
Ну, этот уже был где-то найден в 2006.
in 2006 year, and this crystal was found in 2000 year. Actually, it's this crystal is the biggest one which was mined from this pocket. The weight of the crystal was 7.5 kilograms, but the owner who have found it decided that it will be easier to sell it by the parts, and he decided to cut it into 3 parts. And here is just the head of the crystal.
Я хотел обратить внимание, что высота этого кристалла изначально была в 3 раза больше, чем на фотографии, а этого в 2. Они просто были обрезаны. Этот обрезан для производства ограненных камней, а здесь был обломанный справа. Но он был в 2 раза длиннее, а этот в 3 раза длиннее.
And my father is saying that this crystal, originally, this crystal was longer than in the picture in 3 times. And this crystal also had a damage on the bottom part of it. And it was originally it was longer in 2 times. It was in 2 times longer than in the picture. And because that part of the bottom part of the crystal was damaged, the owner of the crystal decided just to cut it and polish it. For one moment, my father have owned this crystal also. So it's the last picture, and if you have,
Можно сказать, что один из ограненных камней находится в Смоленском музее.
and my father is also saying that one of the cut stones from this crystal is in a Smithsonian Museum in Washington. So it's the last presentation, and thank you for the attention. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them. If you have any questions about deposit or museum. So,
Hello, yes.
yes.
I'm very interested in some people insist that there is originally blue beryl crystals in Volyn pegmatites. Did you meet any in your work?
Actually, the only one crystal of aquamarine was found in the place 170 in 1960 year. It was the only one crystal which was mined in the Volyn deposit, and I even can show you its photo. It's on the front page of this presentation. It was about 700 kilograms, 700 grams, and it was from a place. And what's interesting about that aquamarine crystal that it didn't have any snow inside of it. The snow is the gas and water inclusions, which we call snow. And it's the only one crystal naturally colored aquamarine.
And you are sure it was documented? It was documented that it was found in that it is natural one.
Yeah, it's natural.
I mean, there is documentation, or it's just a legend?
There is a documentation, yes, there is a documentation, but we can also see in this crystal that this crystal is natural aquamarine because it doesn't have any voile, any cracks around the small gas inclusions. When you are looking under the microscope, the heated crystals of aquamarine from Volyn deposit always have some cracks around the gas inclusion. And in this crystal, we didn't have any. And it's also, this crystal is also described in a document as the natural one.
Я бы еще добавил, при нагревании все наши бериллы, если они не чищенные, покрыты по трещинкам лимонита. При нагревании он из желтого приобретает черный цвет. Наличие черного цвета на голубом берилле однозначно указывает.
And there is also one method to understand if the crystal is heated, because almost all of the crystals which were mined in water Volyns have some iron limonite covering on it, and after heating of yellow color. But after heating, the crystals have it even in a small crack, so you can't wash it all. So when you are heating Heliodor crystal with limonite and limonite iron covering, the limonite turns into the hematite,
И цвет
and
черный.
the color is turned into black one.
Yellow.
So the crystal after heating have some black covering on it.
И я бы еще добавил по описаниям в одном из объектов штольни, где также был Питер, описаны природные аквамарины, но мы ни одного не видели.
And my father is saying that there was one more pocket in which there were described crystals of aquamarine. The Peter have seen that pocket. It was in a Vishnikovska open pit. Yeah, the Peter have seen that pocket, but it was totally mined in Soviet Union, and nobody saw the crystals of aquamarine from this pocket. So we think that the only one crystal which is safe now is in a museum of Khoroshev, of precious stones, and it's the only one.
Можно сказать, что по описанию они были хорошие, good form.
No.
Okay, thank you so much for so good answers, so informative. And the last question in this in the same object: did these aquamarines coexist with normal Volyn heliodors in the same pockets? I mean, or in the same body, pegmatite body? Were coexisting heliodors with these aquamarines?
There was with that. I asking if we have if there was found a heliodor crystal with an aquamarine.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this crystal of aquamarine, which I was describing you, which is 400 or 700 grams, was found in the place. Which was lying on a pegmatite, on a totally colonized pegmatite. And in this place, there was also found one crystal of heliodor, which was 1.5 kilograms. So in this place, there were found just two crystals of beryl. The one crystal was aquamarine, and the other one was heliodor.
Рядом находилась пегматитовая, в нем не было.
And it's interesting that there wasn't found any crystals of beryl inside the pegmatite. The crystals of beryl were found just on a place. And it's also interesting to describe that that pocket, or that pegmatite also had a lot of small pockets, but without any beryl inside of them.
И еще я бы упомянул, что иногда в виде зональности в некоторых кристаллах, даже с 521-го, были находки, ну, были области, окрашенные в голубой цвет. То есть не полностью кристалл, а...
And some, my father is saying that in some big, really big crystals of heliodor from the pegmatite number 521, there were found some small fragments, some from parts of an aquamarine inside of the crystal.
Не только в больших,
Not just in a small crystals too.
Очень интересный кристалл гелиодора находится в музее не ювелирного качества.
The very interesting crystal of heliodor, which is not a clean one, but it have a small part of aquamarine inside of the crystal.
Внутри находится центр его голубой, наружу зеленоватый.
The center of the crystal is more blue one, and the surfaces of the crystal are more yellow one.
Мы спросим Питеру потом.
and it's to show the only one saved crystal of aquamarine. It's that crystal.
Да, мы фотографию того кристалла сбросим Питера, о котором я говорил.
We'll send the picture of that zone of crystal of Heliodor to the Peter soon.
Thank you again. It was great. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So have you any more questions?
Thank you very much. I can just add to this with the aquamarine and Heliodor with regards to other deposits. For instance, in southern Norway, Iveland Evje area, you can find frozen matrix, not in pocket, but you can find where the crystal half is Heliodor and half is aquamarine. I have seen and I've documented such. And in Shalava Gora, I have seen also, I didn't find myself like that, but I've seen several specimens.
Потому что также были найдены, ну, он также знает о находках двухцветных гелиодоров, двухцветных периодов, которых одна часть была аквамариниста, одна гелиодориста, на Шерловодском месторождении.
Yes, and one pocket in the Ural Mountains in Alabashka, in Kasionitsa mine, one pocket had one blue 950-gram blue crystal. It was changing from blue daylight to greenish blue. And in the same pocket were pure green and pure yellow crystals. And, you know, this pocket was only 1.5 meters. And one giant pocket in Brazil, there were plenty of Heliodors and aquamarines. They were separated physically a couple of meters apart in the pocket, but in the same pocket.
And говорит о том, что также были найдены на Алабашке и в Бразилии, причем в Бразилии на расстоянии нескольких метров в одном заморыше.
It was in Brazil, the last one.
Спасибо, Питер. Я вот хотел тогда обратить внимание, для волынских берилов характерна зональность, когда желтый цвет находится по наружности. Вот в этом, допустим, бериле и в этом тоже. Наружная зона порядка сантиметра, ярко-желтая. Внутренняя часть вот этих берилов, которые мы видим на фотографии, зеленая, а наружная желтая.
My father says that these crystals and in Volyn deposits, sometimes we find the crystals of Heliodor with a zone, with some color zoning inside of them. For example, these crystals have a color zoning. The surface zone of the crystal have more yellow color, and the middle part of the crystal have more greenish color. So it's more for people who love jewelry. It's very important to know that it's difficult to find a good yellow color or good greenish color from the beryl because of the color zoning.
Причем еще дополнительно верхняя часть берила более зеленая, чем нижняя. Это также характерно для.
This is also it's also usual for the Volyn beryls that the lower part of the crystal have more deep color, as well when the upper part of the crystal have more pale color. Have you any more questions?
Ну, бывают и полощатые зоны окрашенные.
There are also some zones, some lining zones. My father saying that there are also some lining zones in the beryl crystals which are going by lines. One line is more yellow one line is more greenish one, and again.
Похожие на шерловогорские.
Which are a bit similar to the Шерловогорские beryls.
Это для 206-го характера.
It's very usual for the. It's usual for the crystals of beryl from the Pegmatite number 206.
Ну, еще можно сказать и о такой редкости, как отсутствие цвета, рашенит.
And we also want to say about a rare kind of pearls from the Volyn deposit as a goshenite, in which there are not color at all. And there were opened just 2 pockets with the goshenite in the Volyn deposit. One of the pocket was found in the 6th mine in the depths of
Ну, порядка 40 метров.
in the depths of
На шестой на глубине 96
in the depths of 96 meters, and the other one pocket was in a big in a shed which is done in the open pit. You have seen that pocket, Peter. It was about 50 meters depth.
Между этими двумя по прямой находится порядка 40 метров. Они друг от друга, ну, в массиве.
It's interesting that the distance between these 2 pockets is really small one. It's about 40 meters between these 2 pockets.
Да, ну и еще я бы сказал, что как к редким можно отнести чистые цвета.
And it's also rare to find a clean color, clean yellow color or clean green color. It's also rare kind of
blue color,
or
not color.
And without any colors, so
Это
it's
тоже
difficult to find the crystals which have just one deep color without any zoning. So if you have any question.
You mentioned before, just want to to stress it, that really etching is completely different in each pocket. And of course also that only 2% of pockets had beryl and only about 10% had topaz, and the rest quartz, which was the main purpose of mining originally. But etching is completely different. Even of course in the giant pocket 521, etching is different parts. But
yeah, it's interesting about the quartz crystals etched in one pocket, because our pockets are collapsed, and the crystals of quartz which were growing on the ceiling of the pocket have fallen down into the etching zone, and some crystals which fall down more deep in the etching zone, they can be totally etched. Some crystals of Morion which are not so low in the leaching zone, they are not so etched, and the crystals of Morion from the leaching zone to the ceiling of the pocket is smaller and smaller and smaller etched, and can be seen on the faces of the Morion crystals.
Ну, я бы хотел уже Питеру один вопрос задать по его выступлению.
Peter, and can we ask you a question about your presentation?
Of course.
Правильно ли я понял из его выступления, что немецкий профессор считает кюрит целиком производным, микроорганизмами, как фасилия?
If we understand you correct, that the curate, you think that the curate is a fossil. It's like a biological material.
Yes, and of course formed, as you could see, the age dating maximum 1.4 billion years, so 100 million years after the crystallization of pegmatite. So of course, if one's speaking about if we had methane from the beginning, could you combine, I didn't speak with Professor Gerard Franz yet, but of course to combine hydrocarbons like we are eating, we are getting the energy from dividing them. Of course, if you put in energy, you can put them together. Could that have happened, to put methane together just by adding the energy from radioactivity? Yes, it's possible. Now, during 100 million years old, could you put together bigger? So what we see the chlorite, that is of course remnants, fossils, and what there were, if there were combinations, if it's a fungus and bacteria, or this is difficult to know. So Professor Franz, he's studying a lot of literature in this field, which is not my specialty field at all. And I come with a crazy idea, but why not? Why couldn't you put together 2 methane and several methanes to build bigger molecules by using the energy from radioactivity? We know very well radioactivity was much higher 1.7 billion years ago than it is today, with the decade, both of thorium, uranium, and all the isotopes that are formed from the decade, and potassium-40, of course. So, and we know very well also that although we don't find much of radioactive minerals, we can see at least the coloration of the topaz during these 1.7 billion years. It's intensive, beautiful color, which you will not find in younger deposits unless they had a lot of uranium, thorium minerals. And of course, we have the quartz. You can find the quartz, which is deep, deep morion, and both you and your father have seen that some of the crystals are not as deeply colored in the interior. Some are even white inside. So it seems like much of the radiation was, if they grow in the ceiling, they had a huge quartz and they didn't have as much radiation from the quartz, but from feldspars. And you know, the strange thing is we do not find much of radioactive minerals. That there's some, really, really minute, but we have radioactivity.
Ну, мы еще тогда свяжемся лично с Питером и обсудим.
So we have to find some more curates for the analysis.
Да.
And hope
Absolutely, да.
we will visit our deposit soon. So
when mine is reopening, I won't coming as, or maybe I will come now before when the mine is closed, because then we would have time to, without going in the mine, we would have more time to just discuss, you know.
And we hope to have some more interesting confirmation which are done for the Volyn deposit and for the Pegmatites. And we want to and we also want to say thank you to the Leonid Shamansky for the really interesting and Siemens for the really interesting William Siemens for the really interesting scientific material about the pegmatites, especially for the pegmatites from Volyn deposit. And hope everyone finds something interesting in this configuration. So we want to give a word to the last word to the organizer of the configuration, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. All the best. Thank you very much for participating, to speakers and all the audience.
Thank you, everyone. Wonderful series of presentations, very informative and very amazing to see all the gems in the huge chamber. Thank you very much. Great to see everybody.
Thank you very much, Skip.
So, dear friends, all our participations, thanks a lot for your visiting our conference, and it was our last speech of this conference. Of course, no doubt that it was really very interesting to listening of a talk of Vsevolod and of his son Alexander. They opened it to us all of the Volyn deposit secrets, and if you have any questions and you would like to have more information, we are ready to share this information with you. You can write us in our direct or in a chat, or if you will be interesting, you can write to their emails. So it was really very educational and it was interesting. Once again, I would like to thank for all our speakers, because it was really wonderful day. And today in Kyiv, in Ukraine, we have sunshine, and in our hearts, we have a smile and sunshine for all of you. So thank you a lot. And the experience is our first. So let's welcome each other again, and nice to see all of you. thanks for all of you and for all speakers and participations. And also, I would like to tell you that I know that most of you have our specimens, and of course, most of you are interested in buying and have more information about our beryls, topaz, and quartz. So we are ready to share with you all our information. And if you are interested in buying some crystals, in a chat, you can find information about our website, where you can also see what we have, what products we have. Also, we have a social media. You can write us in Instagram or in Facebook, where it will be available for you. So many thanks from our team, Volyn Gems team, that you participate in our first conference of Volyn deposit. We sincerely thank you for joining to our conference, and all for good health, well-being, and new scientific achievements. Bye-bye and see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you
Bye,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.